like hearing this presentation, where we really like moved from the destructive part of our reality towards the regenerative possibilities we have. It just brings me back to the fact that yes, the title of this year's international forum is called "Let's Regenerate the Earth." So we definitely can promise you a lot of focus on these big questions, how this can be done. And looking at you, I as well like connected to the fact that you all were traveling yesterday through many countries, and I believe it must have been a really like intense day. So I can as well promise you that there's going to be a space for a regeneration at this forum, and for example a coffee break is going to come in quite a short while, so just stay tuned, and I'm sure you're going to get enough of coffee and refreshments soon. But just now to still like follow up with this vibes and the topic that opened, I would love to invite first a group of our speakers that we are really delighted that accepted our invitation to the forum, and together we would focus a bit more on this question, like how can we feed the world sustainably. So I would love to invite John Gauci. John Gauci is organic farmer and representative of Maltese organic agriculture movement. So welcome. I would like to invite Uma Humairo, who is Indonesian researcher from University of Wageningen in Netherlands. And I would like to invite Anne-Marie Meyer, who is focusing on the value of nutrition and permaculture. So please take your seat, and I might invite Aurel as well to join. And just following up the big questions that opened, I would invite each of you to just connect to the topic and share with us like what from the perspective of your practice and of your experience, what is the big question of feeding the world sustainably about? I know it's a big question and we have a limited time, but let's just give it a try. And just for you all to know, you're gonna have much more time then to meet with each of the speakers throughout the workshops that will take place all around this beautiful building, and will provide you a lot of time to go more in depth into the conversations. So maybe just to open the floor. Yeah, I know we have a little presentation by Uma about embedding food systems into nature, which might be the first part, if you're ready. Good.
Good morning, everyone. First, I would like to thank the organizing committee for the invitation and the hospitality. I'm Uma Humairo from Farm System Ecology Group, Wageningen University and Research in the Netherlands. I will start this session by introducing our current project on complex rice system. I understand that you do not eat rice a lot as you are as Asian, but this is just as an example how we can feed the world sustainably. So why do I choose rice to be an example here? First, rice is consumed by more than half of world population. Second, rice is produced by smallholders in developing countries. And third, many hunger and malnutrition happen in these poor countries. So now let's start with rice consumption. Yeah, for those of you who knows Southeast Asia, you should know that we are rice lovers. We eat rice 3 times a day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So, yeah, as you can see in the first figure there, the rice consumption reaching 600 grams per day per person in these countries, especially in Myanmar, Vietnam, and Bangladesh. With a very dense population, countries like China, India, and Indonesia, become the top 3 rice consuming countries and leading rice importer countries, although their production also the highest in the world. Why rice become very dominant staple food? Let's take an example in Indonesia. So rice always become a political commodity in Indonesia. Before the colonial period, actually we eat rice combined with local sugars here, and also sagu. Sagu is a giant palm tree. So we extracted the starch from this tree. And then, during the colonial period, Indonesian people were forced to grow export crops in all of the fields, including rice field. So then there was like a rice scarcity at that period. So then people only can eat tubers and cassava. And then by the end of colonialization, Indonesian people can grow and eat rice again, but again they mix it with like a corn, cassava, beans, and tubers. And this is the trend of rice consumption after our independence. In the early years here, we still mix rice with cassava, sweet potato, and other tubers. But then the portion of rice continued to increase with the increase of yield of rice yield because of Green Revolution. Then the rice yields are very high by that time. But then we have a period called a revolution period at that time. And then there was short prices, and then smallholders could not afford agrochemicals to grow rice. On the other hand, during this period, rice ecosystem already degraded. So then these two factors influence the rice production and the yield, and it's become drastically dropped. And this also again influenced the rice consumption from 500 per person per day reduced to less than 300 gram per person per day until now. So with this case, it is especially with a growing population, it is very important to improve rice yield while diversifying our dietary to improve food and nutrition security. So this is the how did we grow rice in traditional way. Traditionally, we use animal and green manures such as azolla and sunhen. Azolla is like a nitrogen fixing plants on the water. And then in early 70s, Green Revolution was introduced, and of course the rice yield increased, but also polluting environment, but then also killing many beneficial organisms like natural enemies and detritivores. And before we have a very big rice barn, to grow some crops, not only rice, but also like corn, bean, etc. But in this period, we make rice barn narrow. Then even you cannot walk on this. As you see here, it's very narrow now.
I may just complete you, because the Green Revolution term, it may sound very positive to some of us, Green Revolution, yes, but in fact in agriculture and the historical development of the last century, it meant actually shift of the original or traditional agricultural system to the more industrial agricultural system with a lot of chemical inputs. So just connecting these dots.
Okay. Sorry, I should give explanation about this Green Revolution. They use a lot of chemical on this system. So that's why many beneficial organisms die. That's why. And this chemical also made some pests become more resistant to chemical. And when you have like a very bad season like wet season, then using more chemical, the pests become more abundant. Then finally, farmers also cannot afford more chemical on it. So that's why farming become more vulnerable to climate and market changes. And finally, the yield also decreased during this unfavorable weather. And yeah, it's actually not the question about can organic feed the world, but now can conventional feed the world in this condition. So yeah, and then in Indonesia around like early 2000, we organic monoculture on rice was introduced, but then yeah, it was only monoculture organic. We lack of resources because we do not have many manure, and so yeah, then this organic monoculture also reduced the yield. That's why the food security also threatened with this system. Now, and then we try to work on this project, how to make this organic rice system better. So we integrate many species on it, from plants like azolla, suntan, and then animal like fish and ducks there. It's just like what Aurel said before, that in conventional system, almost 80% of nitrogen lost through leaching and volatilization. But with this system, with many species on it, they catch nitrogen in different form, like azolla. When nitrogen applied there, azolla first absorbed the nitrogen, and then it died, and then it goes to rice, and the cycle is become like continue. Yeah, and then we test our design across 4 locations and over 3 years. As you can see here, the yellow colors were the yield under complex rice system. They are on the top of the solid line here, means that their yield higher than other, and it's also quite stable throughout the cropping cycle. And then the blue colors is the yield under a conventional system. The position is like crossing the line of the mean yield, the solid one. It means that they can produce a very good yield under favorable condition. But when the weather is very bad, they also very low yield. And then the brown one, it's under organic monoculture. It's continuously low yield, although they are stable. And to conclude, it is important to increase rice yield while promoting food diversification to enhance food and nutrition security. And complex rice system also provide flexible mechanism to control weeds and pests and increase nutrient cycling, leading to a better yield. And finally, yes, with further development and innovation in organic, we can feed the world beyond conventional. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Umar, and I like the way how you rephrased our question. Can conventional agriculture really feed the world? This is definitely an important doubt we are holding here. But right now, I would love to give space to the other participants of our panel. And as well, I'm just looking into the audience, and I imagine you might have questions coming in your mind related to all these topics and the presentations. So we may not have exactly now time for all the questions, but all the speakers will stay with us throughout the 3 days of the forum. So anytime you just see anybody you would like to speak to, whether it's a workshop or not, just don't hesitate and come ask, debate. So now coming back to Anne-Marie, I would just like to give you space to just share your insight from your practice and open the floor for you.
Okay, well, it's a great pleasure to be here today, and I've been listening with a lot of interest and agreeing with all my colleagues have been saying. I think for me, I work as a nutritionist in international development. That's the main focus of my work, and I've got this particular interest in the nutritional quality of foods. And there was, I think, to start with, what I really wanted to mention is about this, what we call the productionist paradigm, which is still very, very dominant, I would say, in international agriculture research, where I've worked in different places. Usually, still, the first objective of any agricultural program is to increase production. And for me, this needs to be very, very much unpacked and taken apart and see, well, what do we mean by that, really? And in order to think critically about it, it comes to that question: how do we feed the world? So it's true that for some farmers, they need to increase their production. But the question we need to ask is, whose production? Who is doing the producing? Is it the small farmers? We need to support the small farmers who might have low yields. They need to improve their agricultural production. Or is it large farmers? If we just say, let's increase production, quite often the result is high input agriculture going to farmers that are already productive. If our only aim is to increase production, quite often that's the sort of program that we end up with. So the first question is, whose production needs to increase? Is it the large farmers, the small farmers, the women farmers in particular? And then the next question is, what are we producing? Is it food that's actually required? Is it a balance of different types of food? We know that diversity is good for agriculture. We also know diversity is good for nutrition. And some of the main problems in nutrition result from a lack of diversity. So if we're talking about increasing production, we want to make sure that it's the right sort of foods and a good balance, both for the soil, the environment, and for human nutrition. And then another question would be, well, what's going to happen to the food once it's produced? Is it going to the market? Is it going to be highly processed into sugary biscuits that are then sold back to the same population who are growing the food in the first place at exorbitant prices? What's going to happen to the food once it's produced? Is it being fed to animals? We've got the rainforest being cut down to produce soya, fed to animals, very inefficient. So my feeling is, we got to get thinking about the questions. What is this production for? What's it doing? Who's doing it? And a big question is about gender in agriculture as well, because we know that so many farmers are women farmers. In Africa, they say 70–80% of food is produced by women. Are the women being supported well enough to produce food for their families, or are we supporting the type of agriculture that's for export? And just finally, another thing to ponder on. I've been to so many countries where you find that the highest area of agricultural production, instead of being associated with good nutrition, that's where you find the worst malnutrition, is in the areas of the country where high production is happening. So I've seen it in Ethiopia, in Tanzania, in Mozambique, just 3 examples, there's plenty more. So we have to ask ourselves, what's going on with agriculture that's not feeding people, actually? So what kind of agriculture is it that's creating more malnutrition instead of less? So I'm giving you questions rather than so many answers, but it's a way of thinking about it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing the questions. And I'm just thinking it might be as well a moment just to introduce a little bit of the workshop that you are running right after the coffee break, because it is about changes of nutritional value of our food, and maybe you could give a bit more.
Yes, so one of the pieces of research I've done is about nutritional quality of food in the UK, but I've also worked on this in Bangladesh, so I'm going to explore that topic a bit more in that session. And then one later this afternoon is trying to think about, we're going to explore a little bit more about these causes of malnutrition, and then spend most of the time thinking about examples of solutions inspired by permaculture. So hopefully we'll be shifting to some good ideas of solutions.
Thank you very much for presenting this. And
so I would like to thank the organizers. I would like to thank the Maltese delegation for inviting our organization to be over here. It was really interesting learning about the actual situation of the world. I am the General Secretary of the Organic Movement in Malta, and we aim to promote organic farming practices back home. I know that we're the smallest country in Europe. I know that we are a small group of people that are willing to promote the organic practices back home and even on an EU level. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to learn what people want. We're trying to learn the huge demand that there is for organic farming, but we're trying also to promote agronomic practices that will aim to reach different goals. But what I would like to add is, are we really looking at the buying patterns? Are we really buying too much food? And one study that I want to start with, that I was part of it, was about the use of heirlooms and land races. And in organic farming, we're trying to promote this concept. This concept is about using local seeds, using land races, rather than importing new varieties. It is about using the seeds that our grandparents used to cultivate. And we found out through this research that we could feed not just 7 billion people, but we could feed 14 billion people if we promote this kind of concept. And our aim is to promote this kind of attitude. It's not just about one holistic approach, one approach, but it is about a holistic approach. We're discussing agriculture combined with the food industry, combined with the natural surroundings, and we need to give value to the food industry in general. we are part of the International Federation for the Organic Movement as well. And one of the main points of discussion that was really interesting last month was about creating a food policy that will be an overarching policy that will lead the agricultural sector rather than isolating the agricultural sector from the food industry in general. And what I would like to say to finalize part of this discussion is that we should start thinking of the real value of the holistic approach of agriculture rather than just isolating some topics there and there.
Thank you very much. I would really love to hear about a food system that can feed 14 billion people. So this is a really very good invitation. And as we are already presenting the workshops, I would still just give a floor to Uma to very shortly introduce the workshop you are going to lead after the coffee break. Just a few sentences so that all our participants have the comparison. And then I would like as well to invite our colleague, Bara, who is leading the fourth workshop, for a very short introduction, if she's around. But now, please.
Okay, thank you. I will just give a short introduction about the workshop. It's still about rice, but how we can diversify rice system. As an example here, how to bring agroecology into this system. But then we will also compare this system, this complex rice system, against golden rice, the new rice genetic. So we try to compare the prices and then the nutrient value on it. So that's only the general thing. So yeah, join me in my states.
Thank you very much. I believe that the insight into the Indonesian rice production and the way how you can do it in organic way will be very interesting. I would like just to add that you are as well an expert on the problematic of genetically modified organisms. So for those of you who are having questions and doubts about the GMO, here is the researcher. So you can just prepare your questions.